Countless black streaks of light struck Lee Minseong like thunder and lightning. He fell to the floor and let out a tremendous roar. Baek Miho immediately followed him to the ground and plunged her fist straight into his abdomen. Lee Minseong's eyes opened and he vomited blood from his mouth. Let's fight here. Baek Miho, with a raging gaze, swung her both hands. Skill Beast Claw. Baek Miho attacked Lee Minseong without a break. If she stopped even for a moment, she could miss him. I don't know what happened, but I can't miss this opportunity. She was taken aback by Suho's sudden ability, but if she missed such an opportunity, Lee Minseong could run away at great speed. Baek Miho spurred on the attack, and Lee Minseong suddenly came to his senses and fought back. Speed was definitely Lee Minseong's advantage, but numerous Shadow Lancers constantly harassed him to fill that agility gap. He could not hide his confused expression. How? What happened? How did the Lancers suddenly appear? What the hell does that human have to do with the Queen Bee? Numerous question marks filled Lee Minseong's head. The moment he saw Suho attacking him, he felt a surge of complex emotions. What kind of relationship do you have with the Queen Bee? Lee Minseong's attack was directed at Suho. Common sense made him think that it's only right to Baek Miho, who is stronger than Suho. But Lee Minseong could not think rationally. He realized what that terrible emotion was. Jealousy. Why did the Queen Bee give the Lancers to someone like you? He used to deny it with all his body, but there was one truth that never changed. That's right. The Queen Bee's favorite and strongest worker bee is me. Me, Lee Minseong, not someone like you. Lee Minseong's raging attack crumbled the whole area like a bomber. Baek Miho hurriedly unfolded her defense skills. Hide behind me, Suho. But instead of retreating, Suho jumped forward. Baek Miho couldn't help but doubt her own eyes. In front of her, Lee Minseong's spear and Suho's sword were fighting fiercely. Lee Minseong's speed was obviously overwhelmingly faster than Suho's. However, Suho never stopped attacking, taking all the unblockable attacks with his bare body. She couldn't help but be surprised at that terribly tough defense. Was he a tank and not a summoning hunter? She was so confused. In the end, she gave up thinking about it. But there was some truth to what she was thinking. Skill, tenacity level increased. Physical defense plus 60%, plus 80%. Great. I'll be able to hold out longer with this. Fighting with all his might, Suho's mind was extremely rational. Body hot, head cold. He was fighting, checking his HP and MP every moment while looking at the status window. Since Lee Minseong was such a strong enemy, there was no room to use the skills that sucked mana in real time. It was suicidal to grow in size with the giant's armor against a fast enemy. Even if he tried to amplify his speed by strengthening Gray, the limit was only a few minutes. Even if he didn't use a skill, he was attacking with mana energy, so he needed to fight while conserving his mana thoroughly. Eventually, it's just the spiritual body manifestation. Among his skills, the one that boasted the most destructive power was definitely spiritual body manifestation. However, it was also a skill that consumed mana in real time. And in order to hit an attack against such a fast enemy, he had to be prepared. Suho ordered the Shadow Lancers. Tie that bastard's feet, tear off his wings, attack the legs. A truly cruel order. But rather, it was the Shadow Lancers who were torn apart. How dare you! In the hands of Lee Minseong, the Lancers' heads were cut and a huge hole was pierced in their chests. It was just the beginning. As Suho's mana decreased, the fragmented bodies of the Shadow Lancers turned into black steam and began to reattach. Lee Minseong was greatly shocked by that. No way, that's just impossible. The jealousy towards a fellow Lancer surged up in his heart. Why didn't the Queen Bee give me the ability to regenerate? Could it be that the Queen was afraid that I would become too strong? Of course not. However, Lee Minseong's misunderstanding became the incarnation of jealousy and grew out of control. He realized one thing. He was originally unable to attack the Lancers sent by the Queen Bee, but now, for some reason, the attack was possible. What does that mean? That's right, I'm already completely free of the Queen Bee. As expected, creating my own core was the answer. Lee Minseong burst into laughter with a face full of joy. He defeated the Lancers and attacked Suho. But at that moment, he saw something. A huge shadow behind Suho's back. The illusion of something huge like a mountain looking down on him with an arrogant gaze. The Queen of Insects, the Plague Monarch, is watching Lee Minseong. In front of that mighty gaze, he became a tiny and shabby insect, trembling before he knew it. Then, the stopped time started to flow again. Lee Minseong's spirit suddenly returned to reality, and the huge shadow was nowhere to be seen. Did I just see something? He didn't know what it was, but Lee Minseong decided to run right away. Besides, my intended purpose was all accomplished. Lee Minseong's gaze turned to Lim Taegyu, who was shooting arrows at the ghouls from afar. I don't know how the ghouls poisoned him. It was clear that Lim Taegyu was suffering from the poison. He managed to suppress the poison with his mana powers, but that will eventually reach its limit. It doesn't matter if I lose all the ghouls I've collected so far, I just need to catch Lim Taegyu. With that, he would be able to take on an S-class hunter as a worker bee. Lee Minseong was mistaken. Unaware of the fact that Secretary O betrayed Lim Taegyu, Lee Minseong mistook him for being addicted to his royal jelly. Okay, I'll run away first. No one will be able to detoxify Lim Taegyu's poison anyway, so I just have to hide quietly and wait until he gets completely poisoned. As soon as he thought about it, he immediately turned around and ran. Make sure to not miss him. Immediately Suho chased Lee Minseong with the Shadow Lancers. You got caught, you bastard! Seizing the momentary gap, Lee Minseong suddenly turned to Suho again. Before I go, Lee Minseong's magic exploded towards Suho. No! Baek Miho hurriedly ran from behind, but it was too late. There was an explosion of highly concentrated magical power. Suho opened his eyes. It wasn't him who received the attack. Lim Taegyu suddenly got in between the two and received the attack by Lee Minseong instead of Suho. Even Lee Minseong was taken aback by the completely unexpected situation. Lim Taegyu, you bastard. Yes, it is me, you son of a bitch. Lim Taegyu looked straight into Lee Minseong's eyes and smiled. Blood poured out of his mouth. However, even in the midst of such pain, his two hands firmly gripped the spear of Lee Minseong, which was stuck in his stomach, and did not let go. No matter how hard Lee Minseong tried, his spear could not be pulled out. Lim Taegyu still had the physicality of an S-class hunter. Lim Taegyu? Lee Minseong desperately struggled with Lim Taegyu. What are you thinking? Don't tell me you're going to die with me. Why would I, bastard? Lim Taegyu struggled to answer those words. It's because of me that you have such a bad temper, right? At those words, Lee Minseong's body suddenly stiffened. Looking straight into his bloodshot eyes, Lim Taegyu muttered with a smile. So, you have to take responsibility, at least as a business partner. Lim Taegyu was truly sorry. It hasn't been more than 2 years since they fought. Before that, they were close friends. How did everything happen? What is this mana power? What is awakening? Why is a guy who was born with everything jealous of me? So Minseong, Lim Taegyu's mana, which had been suppressed until now, suddenly began to surge. At the same time, the royal jelly's poison tried to invade his brain, but everything would end before that. I really can't see my friend getting beaten up by others, so if you will die, just die in my hands. Nonsense, it is you who will die. Lee Minseong roared and attacked Lim Taegyu with his other hand. Suho, like a thunderbolt, got in between the two. Both of Lee Minseong's arms were cut off by his twin swords. Lee Minseong's eyes widened. You talk a lot. Suho, who had been waiting for the moment Lee Minseong was tied up, poured all his strength towards him. Used skill, spiritual body manifestation. Spiritual body manifestation. A large black energy enveloped Suho's arm and spread out as a sword. Suho did not stop attacking, like a giant hand crushing a small bug to death. Again and again, it was ruthless violence against Lee Minseong. No way. Lee Minseong, who lost both arms, couldn't even scream properly, and had no choice but to suffer with all the attacks. Why is this guy? He just couldn't believe the situation. It would be better if it was Lim Taegyu, an S-class hunter, but he couldn't accept the fact that he was being treated so badly by an unknown kid. But it hurt. All of Suho's attacks were so painful. The worst of all, Lim Taegyu was watching his desperate appearance and muttered something. He couldn't hear anything. Lee Minseong, who was already battered, couldn't hear a thing. He got up with his last breath and attacked Suho. At the same time, Suho's huge black fist and numerous black lancers' attacks rained on Minseong's body. Phew. When Suho stopped attacking, a heavy silence came. As Lee Minseong died, the contaminated ghouls around him collapsed at once like a puppet with a thread cut off. The contaminated wasps that filled the ominous sky also disappeared. Oh my god. Baek Miho, who was running to help Suho, stood there blankly staring at Suho. It was an absolutely unbelievable sight. A C-class hunter crushed an A-class villain by force. As expected, that person, Baek Miho, went on her way to guess Suho's identity. Meanwhile, in that suffocating silence, Suho himself was busy reading the noisy system messages. The Queen's Lancer has been defeated. Your level increased. Your level increased. Your level increased. Oh great. Climbing 3 levels at once was worth the hard work. Suho's level was now at 32. Surprisingly, however, the message did not end there. The player has reached the required level. You have met the completion conditions of Secret Quest, Qualification of Corps Commander. There are unread messages. Required level? Qualification of Corps Commander? Suho, who was trying to check the message with a puzzled expression, suddenly stumbled. Suddenly, the floor started shaking as if it were about to collapse. No, that space itself was about to collapse. Young master, you must get out of here immediately. Beru urgently shouted at Suho. The sky was also being torn apart. If it was too late, you could be trapped here forever. Lee Minseong made numerous sacrifices and forcibly brought such an incomplete dungeon, the Sanctuary of Insects, to Earth. That was the role of a Pontifex that Queen Beehive wanted. However, at the same time as Lee Minseong's death, the coercive power disappeared, and the sanctuary was about to return to the dimensional rift. Come on, let's get out of here. Suho put off checking the message and looked back at Baek Miho and Lim Taegyu. Lim Taegyu, who was staring at the dead Lee Minseong, immediately closed his eyes and turned around. Then he glanced at Suho, feeling conflicted, and opened his mouth. I have a lot to ask you, but I'll do it once we get out of here. Me too, Baek Miho added. The three hurriedly escaped from the insect sanctuary. However, just before Suho left the sanctuary, he suddenly stopped and glanced back. It took a lot of hard work to catch him. It's a waste to throw him away. He reached out his hand toward Lee Minseong's body, lying on the ground. Ruler's power. An invisible hand lifted one of Minseong's arms, which Suho had cut off. It was already in a deformed shape to be called a human arm. The lancer's arm, which had a long spear instead of a hand, moved towards Suho like a magnet. Right after that, Suho smiled meaningfully and escaped from the sanctuary. The post-processing was carried out swiftly the moment Lee Minseong, the main culprit, died. All the ghouls that were rampaging in the city stopped moving at once, and all of those disasters ended at once. This was the result of the loss of power from the contaminated royal jelly of Minseong, which corrupted their bodies. Afterwards, Lim Taegyu immediately called a healer specializing in detoxification and received treatment. He was barely able to break free from the poison. I almost died this time. In the future, should I have any kind of a court lady or so, I have to choose my next assistant as a healer specializing in detoxification. Lim Taegyu repeats his resolutions with an exhausted expression. Meanwhile, Baek Miho mobilized all the manpower of the Baekho Guild and took the lead in securing casualties and missing persons. Reaper Guild was not in a position to do so. The incident was somehow solved, but the Reaper Guild had lost so many things due to that. Fortunately, most of the elite B-class or higher were still alive, but the loss of most of the hunters C-class or lower was a big blow. Well, they would just have to recruit new ones, but who will try to join our guild now? I'm worried that those who were there will also leave. Lim Taegyu raised his head and blankly looked up at the sky where Lee Minseong's beehive was. For some reason, he had a vision of the dead Lee Minseong raising his middle finger up in the sky. That damn bastard. This must be why my mom told me to make good friends. Oh right, Secretary O. Lim Taegyu suddenly remembered Secretary O, who betrayed him. He hurriedly looked around. However, no matter how much he searched for him, Secretary O's whereabouts were already unknown. Weird. It felt strange. Secretary O was a secretary he personally selected. He had a moderate personality and was a good guy at work. Since when was he a traitor? Was he even human in the first place? At that time, Secretary O was watching them all with an expressionless face mingling with the crowd. He turned his back as he walked away from the scene. As the bees flapped their wings, without anyone noticing, the face changed to that of Queen Bee Arsha. However, Arsha's expression looked more depressed than Lim Taegyu's. It's futile. Lee Minseong died, and the sacrifices also perished. All the plans she had prepared so far collapsed overnight. The plan was perfect. Yes, looking back, her plan was perfect. Hide in the shade and make a hideout. There, she gradually increased the number of worker bees. I put my heart and soul into making followers, offering sacrifices for the dead Querehsha. In the middle, Lee Minseong ran away, but that level of error was not a big problem. Rather, it served as a catalyst to accelerate her plans. The only cause of defeat was that human. Arsha caught the sight of Suho in the distance. She also thought he was ominous from the first time she saw him. As expected, she should have killed him earlier, but instead, only her worker bees were taken away by him. It has become an urgent situation, even for oneself to survive right now, than to think of revenge. Is this the power of descendants? There was a strong desire in Arsha's eyes looking at Suho. Alright, I'll admit it. From the moment she got involved with that human, she had no chance of winning. Because he is the descendant of Raikon. As expected, he was the heir of the king of beasts, the Fang monarch. It was natural that she would not be able to deal with him with her own power, as she had not yet become a monarch. So she wanted more. If I become a monarch, I will have that kind of power. Fortunately, the succession of the plague monarch did not happen there today. She confirmed the most important fact with her own eyes. I'm leaving for today, Beast King Crow. But someday definitely. Swallowing back words, Arsha's body scattered on the spot. Returning home, Suho had 2 business cards in his hand. The owners of the business cards were Baek Miho and Lim Taegyu. Korean hunters received business cards from the president, and vice president of large guilds that everyone was eager to enter. I'm busy today, so I just let it go. Be sure to contact us tomorrow. It is a must. The two forcibly put the business card in Suho's hand, even while he was frantically answering questions from reporters flocking to do post-processing. Still feeling uneasy, they even took Suho's phone number. It feels like I was casted on the street for some reason. That's not quite wrong. Beru responded to Suho's words with a proud expression. Like when you get recruited on the streets for looking too good, young master is also very good at fighting. When did you grow up so great? That's too much. Leaving Beru, who was shedding tears of emotion, Suho roughly threw the business cards on the desk. It's good to join a large guild. It wasn't just a popular name or a big company. Even if the salary wasn't high, the welfare of a large guild was truly enormous. Depending on the class or experience, one can borrow expensive, high-quality equipment. Large guilds were also equipped with a spacious and sturdy training center that would not collapse even if members used their mana to their heart's content. Other hunters don't grow through leveling up like Suho, that's why they needed more training. It was to use the power given to them more efficiently and strategically. The problem was that I already have them all. Good weapon? Suho had a shop window. As long as his gold was enough, he could buy any equipment he wanted. A large training camp? Is there another hunter in the world who has a personal training ground as big and wide as Suho's? Suho immediately inserted the key into his shadow. Are you going in right away? Yeah, I have something to check. Would you like to enter the shadow dungeon? Yes or no? Yes. Entering the shadow dungeon. In an instant, Suho's vision turned black and white. Before he knew it, the place where he was standing was the shadow dungeon's strength training center, the Pyramid of Ammit. There, Ammit, who was waiting for Suho to come, stood up with his gigantic body and a vicious smile. You are finally here, let's start training. Wait a minute, not yet. As soon as Suho saw him, he hurriedly dissuaded Ammit, who was about to start spiritual body manifestation training. Ammit frowned as he tried to transform into a spirit body. Do you have anything else to do? Yes, there are other important things to do. Suho let out a sigh of relief and checked the message flickering in front of his eyes from earlier. You have met the completion conditions of Secret Quest, Qualification of Corps Commander. There are unread messages. After taking a short, deep breath, Suho immediately checked the message. Secret Quest, Qualifications of Corps Commander. A player has proven himself or herself by reaching the required level. Become a Shadow Legion commander and raise your own crops. This can't be... Suho's eyes widened. Under Suho's feet, the shadow moved on its own and began screaming silently. The sound was grand like a military song of brave soldiers leaving the battlefield, or grotesque like a solemn requiem. You have learned skill Shadow Save. Shadow Save? Before Suho could finish his words, Beru was startled and screamed. Oh my god! Finally, young master has been recognized by his majesty. So far, Suho had released and used a variety of shadow soldiers. There were quite a few useful soldiers among them, but unfortunately, they were only one-day mercenaries. That had been the case up until now. Black bees flocked at the sky. If there was a grave spider arachne, it would have sprung a web right away and tied up the bees in an instant. However, arachne had already gone back to nothing, and Suho had to deal with all those tiny mobs one by one. There was something that Beru once said to Suho. Only a monarch can command corps. Although Suho inherited the shadow power thanks to his father, he was not the shadow monarch himself. In order to become a monarch, a vacancy was needed, and it would exist when the current monarch died. However, Sung Jinwoo was already an immortal being. With that, Suho could forever not become the shadow monarch. But then, Beru said clearly, young master does not have the authority to handle corps yet. He said yet. That very moment finally came to Suho. Skill, Shadow Save Level 1. Shadow Power, no mana cost. Shadow soldiers are stored in the caster's shadow. Stored soldiers can be summoned or stored back whenever the caster wishes. Number of stored shadows, 0-1. Oh wow. Suho's eyes widened as he checked the skill window. Above his head, Beru was flying round and round, shedding tears of joy. You must be so thrilled. His Majesty has finally allowed young master to have a private soldier. A private soldier? Suho muttered. In the end, there was still a level limitation. Level is, after all, an indicator that the system easily recognizes limiting the protection. If power were to be given to low-ranking ones, they would rather be consumed by the energy of death and become a shadow soldier. Storing the soldier of death in one's shadow was the same as saying that death always followed beneath one's feet. Now, he finally has the authority to lead a private soldier. What was important to Suho was, after all, numbers. Number of saved shadows, 0-1. Just one. Suho sneered. That was probably because his level was also low. It's like saying I need to increase the number by myself one by one, It will also be affected by the intellect stat just like the shadow release skill. Suho suddenly remembered the time when he was young and sat side by side with his father to play games. At that time, his father would often nag him, saying, "How can you fall asleep with that level? Somehow, even if we play the same game, you level up so fast. Leveling up was your main job." Which one do you plan to save as the first soldier? Suho, who had escaped from his thoughts at Beru's question, responded with a smirk. Why are you asking? You already know. Of course, the one he had been having the most trouble with lately. Suho put down one side of Lee Minseong's arm, which he had brought with him, on the floor. Shadow release is possible on this target. Shadow release was possible even with only a part of the corpse. After all, the body is just a medium. A dark aura was already moving around Lee Minseong's arm. An ominous cry echoed in the shadows. Lee Minseong was screaming to get him out of that hell. The aura was frighteningly ferocious. Okay, if you want it that much, I'll take you out. Suho stretched out his hand towards him. Arise. A black shadow began to wriggle. Attempting to release, in the shadows, Lee Minseong's face stretched out and opened his mouth. However, a notification popped up with the sound of metal snapping. Shadow release failed. You have 2 more chances left. Failed? Suho's eyes narrowed. He wasn't too surprised because he expected failure to some extent. Shadow release increases the probability of release failure in proportion to the target's ability level. Lee Minseong was an A-class hunter with much more mana power than Suho, and the latter did not fight alone to win in the first place. That's why he's more coveted. Suho remembered. Lee Minseong, the strongest lancer, was developed by Queen Bee Arsha with great care. Even so, if he could reap that arrogant fellow who voluntarily escaped from the Queen Bee for his own purposes as his own soldier, the thought alone made his heart swell. 2 chances left. After taking a deep breath, Suho calmly attempted the second release. Arise. Shadow release failed. You have 1 more chance left. I'm getting dizzy. He expected it, but he couldn't help but be nervous when there was only 1 chance left. Even at that moment, Lee Minseong was struggling to get out of the black smoke. Do you want to come out too? He felt his eagerness. Suho's eyes grew serious. You must have been jealous of my shadow lancers. Lee Minseong had shown jealousy when he saw the lancers who resurrected even if they died while fighting him. Why didn't the Queen Bee give me the ability to regenerate? Could it be that she was afraid that I would become too strong? He was seriously mistaken. In the first place, that power was not something a Queen Bee could give. Come to me. I'll make you the strongest lancer. Suho's eyes flashed with strong will. Arise! That moment, Minseong roared and came out of the black smoke. Then, the black smoke that followed began to form a body that was not yet completed. Shadow release succeeded. Finally, Suho bursted into relief. However, it did not seem to be a complete resurrection. A strong desire led to the fighting spirit of the dead. However, the power of the shadow soldier is weakened because the dead's stats are too high compared to the caster's. The level of the shadow starts at 2. Weakened to level 2? Suho made a puzzled expression. What level was it originally? Level 2. Knight class. Eventually, a lancer made of black steam landed on one knee in front of Suho and bowed his head. Greetings to my master. Huh? You can talk? Suho and Baru's eyes widened at the same time. The other shadow lancers couldn't speak. Only this one had that ability. Is it because it's a knight class? I don't think so. In order to be able to speak normally, you need to be at least general class. Or was it really necessary? Baru too looked perplexed. Maybe it's because young master has been playing with the shadow soldiers since he started babbling. In the end, they can only speculate on the effects of talent and early education. Names can be given to soldiers of knight class or higher. The given name remains until the shadow disappears. Please specify the soldier's name. Suho pondered for a moment. The name Lee Minseong was so infamous that he did not want to use it as it was. All right, since Lee Minseong wanted to succeed Querehsha, Ki. Do you want to use K? Yeah. As soon as Suho finished speaking, a new name was engraved instead of the question mark above the shadow lancer's head. Quay level 2, knight class. Thank you for the great name. Lee Minseong, who was born again under the name of Ki, smiled faintly and stood up. When he was alive, long poisonous needles sprouted like spears in both hands instead of his hands. But now that he was born again, only one poisonous needle was attached to it, and the other hand was a normal hand. Is it because I only cut off one arm? While taking a look at Ki, Baru flew up and mocked Lee Minseong. I feel sorry for you. A guy who was once so strong was only a level 2 knight now. However, Ki only snorted at Baru's provocation. I can't believe this. You of all people dare to laugh at me? Baru's ego was pierced, and he flinched. Baru level 1, pawn class. For reference, the current mini Baru's rating was far below. This is not my real self. The same goes for me. The important thing is the present, right? What? How dare the distant successor speak back? Says the pawn. Beru was genuinely enraged, and Ki indifferently looked at him with arms crossed. In the middle of a bloody nerve war between the two, Suho said a word. Ki. Yes, master, what is it? Show some respect to the elderly. Elderly? Kuei's eyes widened in surprise at those words. However, the body had already obeyed the command and immediately bowed his head. Young master, why are you... Beru is like the uncle who raised me. You'll get in trouble if you mess around. Young master! Beru flew in with tears of emotion and clung to Suho's head. At the same time, he glanced at Ki with a side eye and began to chuckle coolly. Looking at it now, you're level 2 because you're number 2. As if those words touched the wrath, Ki's face crumpled as if he hit his head on the floor. We'll see, you bastard. It seemed that the war of nerves between the two would continue. A pretty useful-looking soldier. Where did you get this guy from? Amit, who was watching what Suho was doing from the side, was looking over at Ki amusingly. Suho told him everything that had happened that day, and Amit bursted out laughing when he heard the story. You still have a long way to go. You mean you struggled because of just a few bugs? There weren't just a few. Even Master would have had a hard time, I bet. Sounds funny. Even if hundreds or millions of those bugs come at once, they can't do any damage to me. It was not an exaggeration. Amit's thick skin is a kind of full body armor itself made of steel. With that solid defensive power, he would have ignored all attacks, strode towards the captain and trample him on. I have more questions other than that. What? Suho remembered himself during the last battle that took place that day. It would be quicker to show you. Look at this. Use skill spiritual body manifestation. Suho raised his sword and casted the spiritual body manifestation technique. A black aura flowed through his arms and wrists and drew sword energy from the blade. Seeing that, Amit's eyes flashed. Whoa, it's quite good. Extending the spiritual body manifestation technique to weapons. Was this originally possible? Of course, but Tarnak couldn't do it. It was something that even an iron body monarch couldn't do? Suho was surprised at Amit's unexpected answer. Amit smiled meaningfully and stared at Suho intently. Yes, since he was a goblin from birth, the only thing he could do was to strengthen his body. Actually, that alone was good enough. But you are different. Suho was not a goblin, but the son of a shadow monarch. If the starting point is different, the result is bound to be different. I'm curious too. What kind of monster will you turn into if you master spiritual body manifestation? At that moment, Amit's body grew larger and began to transform into a spiritual body. If you're done with your business, let's start training now. Wait a minute, I'm not yet ready. The heavy gravitational field pressed down on Suho. A workout? No. A daily quest that was harder than fighting Querehsha had begun. Hyunmu Guild, 2nd Management Division. Where did I see him? I'm sure I've seen him somewhere. Hyunmu Guild's section chief Lee Young-ho had been immersed in thought since earlier while watching the video of the large-scale disaster filmed by a drone. In the paused video, 3 hunters were captured soaring towards the hive with black wings spread. 2 of them were the famous Lim Taegyu and Baek Miho, so he could recognize them. The problem was the other one. The identity of the 3rd hunter was not known yet. It seems that Baeko Guild and the Reaper Guild are controlling the information. Yes, accordingly, they are responding to reporters' requests with thorough silence. That means... Yes. In an instant, Section Chief Lee Young-ho and his subordinates nodded their heads to each other with eyes filled with confidence. That means they haven't recruited that hunter yet. I think so too. If they already got him, there's no reason to hide the information. Rather, it will be widely publicized and used to promote their guild. Of course, wing buffs are rare. Lim Taegyu and Baek Miho did not have the skill to grow wings. If so, it was the 3rd hunter who gave the buff. The strategic value of a hunter who could give others the ability to fly was enormous, regardless of class. Rather, the lower the rating, the better. Low cost but high value for money. We have to somehow recruit this useful guy before other guilds snatch him away. In particular, he should never be in the Baeko Guild. Baeko Guild was famous for recruiting only hunters with beast transformation skills, but healers and buff hunters were exceptions. Since that hunter has a wing ability, there was a high possibility that it was included as a beast transformation skill. Baeko Guild would surely not miss the chance no matter what. First of all, make a contract. Meanwhile, I'll try to figure out his identity somehow. What about the offer? We're not playing here. Leave the deposit item blank for now. If he's someone who just awakened, we should try to offer him as much as we can. Alright, but how will you find out who he is? With my head. Chief Lee Young-ho pressed his forehead with 2 fingers as if he were using superpowers, and his eyes flashed. You know what? Before Cataclysm, I was a hairdresser. I remembered every face and name of every customer who had ever passed me by. Here we go again. With the same repertoire every time, the subordinate shook his head and went back to his seat. However, Lee Young-ho believed in his sharp memory. I've seen him. It's definitely a face in my memory. What have I missed? In his head, countless hunters' faces began to unfold like a panorama. I haven't met him in person. If I did, I would have remembered right away. Was it a face I saw on HunterNet or on the news? Ah, I remember now. Section Chief Lee Young-ho suddenly jumped out of his seat with bloodshot eyes. That's him. That E-class summoning hunter who dared to knock us down. What, an E-class hunter? The subordinate who was printing the contract next to him tilted his head and asked, Yes, punk. Also, don't you know me? It's only been a month, so how can I forget it? The employee still looked puzzled at the words of the section chief. Chief, are you sure? If he's really E-class, how did he get 3 people to fly, even if it's a skill? Wouldn't he run out of mana and fall? That's what we need to figure out. Regardless of the method, make sure to recruit him. The other guilds will also have their eyes on him right now, so hurry up. We're working overtime again today. Meanwhile, the Baeko guild was having a hard time because of Suho. Vice President, other guilds keep asking for the identity of that hunter. What should we do? Just pretend you don't know. That's kind of weird, since his face is already widely known. They must be looking for each of the C-class hunters in the Seoul area to check too. Try to hold out until we recruit him first. Baek Miho had been holding onto her cell phone with a nervous expression on her face. However, no matter how many times she tried to call Suho, he wouldn't answer. Are you sleeping? If you see this text. She had already sent a text message, but even if she waited long enough, she never got a reply. He didn't give me a wrong number, did he? If he did, someone else would have received it. Or maybe, did he block me? No, it can't be. That didn't even make sense. Yeah, there's no reason to block me, right? We fought together as colleagues. I even carried him on my back? Oh wait, could it be that President Lim Taegyu already took him? Baek Miho's eyes raged when he thought of Lim Taegyu. If they were colleagues who fought together, Lim Taegyu was the same. That guild already went into hell due to the incident, and it was no exaggeration to say that they were completely ruined financially. Even just dealing with the situation and paying compensation to the casualties would have cost an astronomical amount. It's not impossible though. President Lim Taegyu himself is an S-class hunter. A hunter's true strength comes from force, not money. Even if all the hunters of the Reaper Guild left, it could be built again, as long as Lim Taegyu, an S-class hunter, was there. Either rebuild the guild or start a new guild. In such a situation, Lim Taegyu would never want to miss out on that outstanding hunter named Sung Suho. Vice President? Baek Miho was muttering to herself with an anxious expression when the personnel manager of Baeko Guild spoke. Was this hunter Sung Suho really that great? Even though the wing buff is rare, I heard that he is only a C-class hunter. He's not just a C-class, Baek Miho said firmly. It doesn't matter if it's his hunter level or a wing buff. Hunter Sung Suho. Other guilds didn't know anything right now. The only reason they care about Suho is probably because of the wing buff. Or maybe because he was the only hunter who could be recruited among the 3 who stopped the disaster. Since they couldn't recruit Lim Taegyu or herself, their purpose was to take the other one and use him to promote their guild. But Baek Miho was different. She watched Suho's battle closer than anyone else. In the scene of a bloody battle, he is someone who should not be taken away by anyone. 13 missed calls. What's with this many calls? Suho, who managed to get out of the shadow dungeon after completing the difficult daily quest, checked his phone. Half of them were Baek Miho and Lim Taegyu's numbers, and the other half were unknown numbers. How wonderful! Young Master's popularity is overwhelming. Calm down, it's not that much. While Eight-Legged Bear was spinning and bursting into a frenzy of joy, Key skillfully turned on the computer and showed Suho the news on the internet. Master, would you like to see this? It seems that the Master's face has spread through various media this time. I see. The internet was burning hot because of the disaster caused by Lee Minseong. Of course, there had been many news about Suho until now, but most of them knew him as Beast King Crow because he was wearing a crow mask. This time things were very different. Since the famous Baek Miho and Lim Taegyu were right next to him, Suho's face was also widely publicized. Quay, who was watching Suho's reaction from the side, quickly knelt down and begged, I have committed a mortal sin. It looks like you're having trouble dealing with what I've done this time. Raise your head, sinner, and die. Baru cut Kay's head at this time, but it quickly got back together, and Suho's mana was drained. Quay didn't even care about Baru and just looked at Suho. Sorry, but were you hiding your identity? No, it's not really like that. Right now, young Master is quietly developing his strength. It's because there could be apostles from outer space acting secretly on Earth. His eyes flashed meaningfully and he opened his mouth. Even at this moment, far away in space, His Majesty is fighting a fierce war with outer powers. The fact that the gate opened on Earth was also something they did to target our backline. Beru gave a long speech to the newcomer, Ki, about the truth going on in the outside universe. Quay nodded and looked over at his senior with a serious face. He was quick to understand, because he had already instinctively realized the truth about the Monarchs, to some extent after being turned into a worker by the Queen Bee. Right. So, are the flying insects roaming around here also the apostles of outer space? No, those are real flying insects. Is that so? In fact, from the moment they came out of the shadow dungeon, there were beings that disturbed Baru and Ki's senses. Today, unfamiliar entities were being felt near Suho's house. Young master, why are there flying insects outside the house? Suho opened the window and checked outside. People whom he felt mana power with were watching that side of the alley. A light flashed in Suho's eyes. Hunters. Seeing that they are secretly wary of each other, it seems like they came from different groups and places. Master, there are some faces I know among them. Apparently those guys are like scouts from guilds who came to recruit Master. They found out my personal information so quickly? Suho was a little surprised. It's only been a day since the case was solved, but he didn't know they'd already found out where he lived and came to find him. Because that's what they do. Since your face was shown, they probably spent all night scouring HunterNet or association information. Just then, the sound of the wind came from outside the window. When Suho did not come out of the house no matter how long they waited, someone launched a drone with a camera on it. Then, as if the others didn't want to lose, they started to take out drones as well. They seemed to be checking through the window to see if Suho was inside the house. What the? Even drones? Suho frowned. Are hunters not given any privacy at all? After the cataclysm, the world is in a state of emergency, so they tend to ignore minor laws. I will take care of it right away. Don't do it. Suho pulled Baru's antennae as he was about to jump out. Baru groaned while clinging to his hand. If you draw too much public attention, there is a risk that the existence of Master will be exposed to unknown outer apostles. If true outer apostles exist, it seems that I have already been exposed. Besides, shouldn't it be known that I am the son of the Shadow Monarch anyway? That's right, but still, Suho had no intention of leaving them alone. Ruler's power. As Suho stretched out his hand, an invisible hand crushed all the drones that were flying in the air. What? Why did it suddenly? As their drones exploded one after another, the scouts hiding in the alley were extremely perplexed. Those flying insects shouldn't go away with this. Show me what you saw. Right then, Suho's cell phone vibrated. Who is this again? Suho's eyes widened as he checked his phone with an annoyed expression. Suho's uncle. The call came from Yu Jinho, the husband of his father's only sister. Yu Jinho was an adult. Suho was grateful to, as he had been taking care of Suho ever since his parents went missing. He must have seen the news. A troubled look appeared on Suho's face. He was already worried about how much explanation he would make. Oh dear, Suho, what on earth is going on? As soon as Suho answered the phone, his eardrum almost bled at that loud voice. He answered with an awkward voice. Haha, uncle, hello. What hello? Your face suddenly appeared on the news. I was so shocked. How is your body? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm okay, not even injured. Really? Yes, for real, I'm fine. Switch to video call. Suho changed the audio call to a video call. A middle-aged man poked his face through his cell phone and glanced at Suho. Let me see, your face is still handsome. How about your body? Did it get better? You really look fine. Because I really am. Thank God. Only then did Suho's uncle, Yu Jinho, let out a deep sigh of relief through his phone. You kid, I thought you were quietly drawing at school. When did you become a hunter? If you have awakened, you should have reported it to this uncle first. I'm sorry, I forgot because I was so busy these days. That was never the reason. Since he awakened, incidents and accidents have been constantly popping up every day. It was surprising that even Suho himself had been an art student, who had been quietly drawing ants in front of a canvas until just a month ago. Yu Jinho clicked his tongue at Suho's obvious excuse. There is something I forgot. You are my brother-in-law's son, but is it hereditary to be indifferent? You didn't tell your grandma and grandpa, did you? Yes. Why should I tell them? It will only worry those who live leisurely in the countryside for no reason. That's right. How bad it must be for the hearts of the elderly if they even read the news related to you this time. My heart raced so much after watching the news that I postponed all of my meetings scheduled for today. I think Uncle's heart is worse. I don't think I've ever seen my grandparents in such pain in my life. Whatever, you rascal. Anyway, my schedule is empty right now because of you. Do you have some time? Now, yeah. Do you know how many people died in the disaster? Maybe seeing you with my own eyes will calm my heart, so let's see each other for the first time in a while. Do you know where our company is located? You want me to come to Uncle's company now? No. It would be annoying if people found out about the current situation. I'll get my driver to fetch you. Just put on some clothes and get in my car. When the call ended, Suho shrugged. Well, it's better. He wanted to see his uncle's face after a long time. To shake off the annoying flying insects outside, Suho dressed roughly for going out. Yeah. After a while, a black limousine arrived in front of Suho's house. Are you Sung Suho? I came here to get you as ordered by the CEO. Awakener? Suho's eyes lit up at the familiar mana energy he felt from the driver. Did he send a driver and bodyguard? Dr. Min Byung-gu was the same, but just because he had awakened, not everyone wanted to risk their lives to enter the dungeon. Rather, there were quite a few awakeners who were engaged in safe work outside the dungeon like this, if the salary was right. Get in the back. I will open it for you. No, I will take care of it. Suho politely tried to stop the driver from opening the back door. Wait a minute, stop there. Mr. Sung Suho, let's talk for a minute. The scouts who were waiting for Suho to run out in a hurry to block Suho's way. I am a headhunter from the Hyunmu Guild. I know you're still a freelancer. Can I talk to you for a minute? Let's start with the terms and conditions. No matter where you go, a C-class hunter will never get these conditions. Why do you people keep on pushing? Sung Suho, let's go to a nearby cafe. Scouts scrambled to give Suho a business card, grab Suho by the wrist, and drag him away. Suho's brow furrowed slightly at their rude attitude. Scouts in large guilds are generally like this. In particular, they are overbearing against hunters below intermediate level, because they think they are the top. Quay, accustomed to such things, whispered in a voice that only Suho could hear. Would you like to get in first? At that time, the driver who had come to pick up Suho took off his black sunglasses and stepped in front of Suho. I will solve this. When he took off his sunglasses, his cold eyes were revealed. However, despite his stern look, the scouts didn't care at all. Rather, they began to press the driver with force. Hey, can't you tell the difference between me wearing this and not? We know, and how dare a chauffeur or something intervene? Do you know how much of an important opportunity of a lifetime has come to Hunter Sung Suho? The problem was that the scouts were also awakeners. Since they had to deal with hunters because of their job, they need to be the front line in recruiting newbies for greater chances of succeeding. Just like that, an unusual air current flows between the driver and the scouts. It's okay, I will just talk. Suho raised his hand to stop the driver and stepped forward. Then, the faces of the scouts bloomed and began to condescend to Suho with expressions that they knew it would happen. As you should. As expected, young friends can communicate well. I assure you, if you listen to our terms, you will surely... That moment, the faces of the scouts who were excitedly opening their mouths quickly began to turn pale. There it was. Suho's distant gaze, indifferently looking at them. A pitch-black abyss whose end is unfathomable. Effect, fear is activated. All stats of the targets are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. Suho opened his mouth. I don't know what the conditions are, but I will receive them by email. If you've got my home address, you probably know my email address. If you come to me like this again, you have learned skill, live level 1. There was no need for an afterword. As the system message guarantees, Suho's life skills were real, as he learned them through a lot of chaos. Let's go. Suho takes his eyes off them and gets into the limousine. The driver, who looked at the scene with a strange expression for a moment, put on his sunglasses again and lowered his head. Yes, we'll get moving. The limousine is getting farther and farther away. It wasn't until the time when Suho was no longer visible that the breath they had been holding back came out of the scouts' mouths. Whoa. What was that just now? How can his eyes... C-Class, are you sure about that information? Isn't he a summoning hunter? As they looked at each other, they thought of one thing. It was the need to increase their offers to give Suho. Young master, how did you do that? Beru's excited voice was heard by Suho. Could you imitate Raken Sword's contempt for the weak skill? Yeah, it worked when I just did it. Wow, I'm so proud of you. Ever since young master was a child prodigy. Leaving Beru's fuss behind, Suho checked the skill he had just developed. Skill, live level 1. Active skill. Requires 100 mana. Inflicts fear on the target for 1 minute with powerful energy. Multiple targets can be specified. Effect fear. All stats, 50%. Contempt for the weak and the details are the same. Should I say it's for a more general purpose? Whatever the name, the effect would be similar anyway. After all, it wouldn't work if used to someone stronger than him. We're here. After a while, A luxurious tall building appeared in front of Suho, who got off the limousine. Agensoft, the best game company in Korea, both in name and reality, that succeeded in the virtual reality game industry. Suho's uncle, Yoo Jin-ho, was the founder of that company. Agensoft CEO Yoo Jin-ho, a miraculous success story of a young entrepreneur who refused to succeed a conglomerate. This was the story that Yoo Jin-ho had before becoming famous when Suho was very young. But at this time, no one would have expected it. The game company run by Yoo Jin-ho, the youngest member of a conglomerate family, has been consistently winning and winning for 20 years, establishing itself as the best game company in Korea. In particular, its first successful virtual reality game called Beautiful World was a terrible longevity game that has been steadily popular even after 20 years. Middle-aged gamers, who have been playing the game for 20 years, have even nicknamed it Beautiful Man. Would you like to follow me? I will guide you to the CEO. Ah yes. Suho followed the driver and took a leisurely look at the magnificent interior of the company. I heard there's something new here every time I come. Befitting a company that succeeded with virtual reality games, state-of-the-art virtual reality equipment was displayed in the spacious lobby on the first floor. Suho also enjoyed playing games until his awakening, so he was looking around to see if there were any new games or equipment. Huh? Today, something different than usual caught his eye. Why are hunters running around the game company? Inside the building, fully armed hunters were walking around being wary of each other. Did a dungeon open here? Couldn't it be that the flying insects came after knowing that the young master came here? They have no reaction even if they make eye contact with master. Could it be that they came for a job offer? Work? What kind of business do hunters have at the game company? As Kay mentioned, the hunters did not react at all, even when they saw Suho. A few of them with good senses noticed that Suho was a hunter, but rather looked at him with eyes that found him as a competitor. What's with that idiot? How could he come in confidently dressed like that? Suho was even more confused when the hunters laughed while looking at him up and down with his casual clothes. Those hunters must be curious. The driver who was walking with him noticed Suho's expression and explained it. The new game that the company is planning these days needs some advice from hunters. Because of that, many hunters have been coming to the company until their feet are worn out. Hunter because of a game? Suho made an even more puzzled expression at those words. Yes. After all, if the game goes well, the hunter guild that helped will receive promotional effect. This is confidential, so if you meet the CEO, ask him directly. He's right there. Just then, I saw Yoo Jin-ho talking with a hunter in the distance. CEO, is there any other guild with a better image than our Hyunmu guild? Collaborating with us is... You don't have to keep coming back like this. We will make a selection based on fair standards. Oh sure, of course you have to be fair. So please look at our armed appearance like this, and we... Hyunmu Guild's manager Lee Young-ho was rubbing his hands together, walking after Yoo Jin-ho. As Suho was about to approach, armed hunters blocked his way and glared at him. Who are you again? Adults are having important conversations, but you can't even grasp the atmosphere. But then... Oh, Suho, you must have had a hard time coming. Yoo Jin-ho, who happened to find Suho, smiled broadly and started running towards Suho, leaving Chief Lee Young-ho behind. The eyes of the hunters widened wide at that appearance.